Hi and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen and today we'll take a look once again at the rookie class of 2020-2021. So stay tuned. We have passed the 50-game mark for this very season, so I think it's time to take yet another look at this year's rookie class, just to go into the details a little bit and see how players have come along. Last time I did a video, it was pretty early in the season, so now, as we've moved way over the halfway point, it's really time to take a look at how they've done, how they have exceeded certain expectations, maybe some have disappointed. We'll get to see that, but ultimately, before we start, I just want to lay out this. This rookie class, I was super skeptical of it last year before the draft rolled around. I was very negative about this class. I'll admit that. And you know what? It's turned into not a super great, but a very decent draft class overall, which I think is so positive for the NBA considering what we were looking at initially. I mean, the comparisons to the 2000 drafts were alive for a long time, and I think it's fair to say that this draft is definitely going to exceed that. So good news for the NBA, especially looking into 2021, where they're absolutely going to get an even better draft class. So I think this was a bullet dodged. So let's start off with Anthony Edwards, drafted first overall by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I was a little bit down on Edwards in the first video I did about NBA rookies. I am back on the Edwards bandwagon, train, whatever you want to call it. I think he has responded beautifully. Over the past 18 games, we're looking at a guy who's averaging almost 24 points per game as an NBA rookie, no less. That has just been outstanding production. Now, yes, I'm well aware that he's playing for just a dreadful Minnesota squad, and that does stand to reason that some of his raw numbers are going to get just a little bit inflated because of that. That being said, when you consider the usage rate that he's playing with, when you consider how many possessions is being basically thrown at him at the deep end of the pool, it's remarkable how he's responded. We're looking at a guy who is fearless. He is dunking all over guys. He's taking the ball to the basket aggressively. He isn't shy from shooting from the outside. I love his composure. I think there's a player in there that is definitely worth keeping an eye on moving forward. I will be very intrigued to see what he can do next year as a sophomore when he has a full summer to kind of decompress and also realize, oh, you know, I'm in the NBA. I had a good rookie season. See how he builds on that confidence level. I think Edwards is going to be super nice. I mean, we are looking at a guy who potentially down the line could develop into a steady 25-point scorer. I mean, hell, he's so close already over his past 18 games, so it wouldn't even be a far-gone expectation for him. So yes, Anthony Edwards right now is doing a lot of good things. I still want to see what he can do defensively, though, and I think that could come if the Timberwolves become a better team, get better players, get a better infrastructure. But his physicality, his athleticism, his strength, his size, it is just tailored to become a good defender. All he needs is the will and the IQ to do so. And you know what? I know a lot of people have pegged him as a low IQ player. I was kind of on that wagon as well. I don't necessarily think that's super true anymore. Now, that being said, he's no LaMelo Ball. We'll get to Ball as well. But he is beginning to read patterns a lot better than he did early on in the season. So super intrigued by Anthony Edwards at this point. I mean, I don't want to give out grades or anything. I think that's a little bit phony, but he has definitely passed the initial test. I think there's just so much room for optimism on that part. If you're Minnesota, at the very least, you have a foundational piece that you can build on along with Karl-Anthony Towns. Depending on how long he'll stay, we'll see. That's still a very floating topic that could change any given night. But as of right now, thumbs up to Anthony Edwards. I think he's responded just remarkably. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on James Wiseman. I spoke about him yesterday at my Monday news dump. Obviously, he might be out for the year with the meniscus injury. That doesn't really look good. His rookie season was very much up and down, but you do see the potential, you do see the shooting stroke, you do see the size, the athleticism. So I definitely think there's a player in there down the line. This season was not his best. I have to assume he was very much overpowered, and yeah, he was kind of lost on the NBA court here and there. But I do think it's worth mentioning that despite those struggles, he still put up 11.5 points and 5.8 rebounds. That's still solid production for someone who was that raw, that young, who came in with no training camp, no summer league, only played 3 games in college. So that's a pretty decent return, I think, early on. That said, he still needs to work on virtually everything, but it is what it is. Still super young. I hope he returns. So his rookie season is really tough to gauge because of that end to it, because of the injury, because of all of these factors, which are really a lot of moving parts. So far, though, I think we've seen enough from him to at least expect a lot of improvement going forward. LaMelo Ball, obviously, same situation as James Wiseman. Looks like he'll miss the rest of his season, which is really just tough because he was having a Rookie of the Year campaign, being an all-around guy. He came in with a lot of question marks hovering over him, like could he be an efficient scorer? Would the speed of the NBA game give him trouble? No to the last one, yes to the first one. He was just downright amazing from the get-go. He just took on the NBA challenge and ran with it. I think that shows so much poise for a young guy coming in. His level of confidence as a rookie has been really noteworthy. We're talking about a guy who's taking long threes, taking chances with the basketball, which is super important, by the way, especially for rookie point guards. Someone who's hitting the glass, someone who's stepping up in the clutch. I mean, what's not to love about LaMelo Ball's game right now, outside, of course, of the defense, which is still a work in progress. That said, he's tall, he's speedy, he's got hips that simply move so well that I don't think defense ultimately is going to be a huge problem down the line. If it still is in a couple of years, then I'll be worried. But as of right now, clear Rookie of the Year frontrunner. It really hinges on how Anthony Edwards finishes this season, but so far I still have LaMelo as my Rookie of the Year pick. Obviously, just a guy who can turn around a franchise in Charlotte. I'm going to be super intrigued to see him, not just next year, but like a couple years down the line when he's become more refined. He still has that tendency 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times per game when he makes a decision where you just go, whoa, that's horrible. And that's not even the rookie of mistake. That's just you just playing off of your own confidence, or maybe even a little bit of arrogance, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So when he gets those things ironed out and becomes a more stable player, I mean, good Lord, we could be looking at one of the elite point guards in the entire NBA. Super rookie season for LaMelo Ball. Really tough that he went out with the injury. Hoping he comes back. And again, Summer League, well, maybe not Summer League, honestly, when you win Rookie of the Year, or if you're a candidate to it, you aren't really inclined to play Summer League. But at the very least, a full training camp going into next season, that's also going to be beneficial. Really like what he's doing. Patrick Williams in Chicago, he was one of my favorites in the last video. I think he's stepped down a little bit off that threshold. He's still super intriguing. I think long-term, there is great potential for him being one of the best players in this draft. In the first video, I said I wouldn't be surprised if he was the best player in the draft. I take my foot off that stance just a little bit because of how LaMelo has played, how Anthony Edwards has played. But I do think that Williams projects as one of the best two-way players in this draft. He's big. He's got the shooting potential. He is not really that aggressive. He's a little bit passive, but he's also the second youngest player in the entire NBA. So I'm not too concerned about that. What I think the Bulls need to see from him a little bit more is assertiveness. Over the past 2 games, he's averaging one single point. So that's not super great. I think it's time for him to step it up just a little bit. And I know that's a big ask for rookies, but he is 6'8", 235. He's got a great build, a great body who can really absorb contact. I think that's the next step for him. The Bulls are kind of struggling a little bit. I think for him to get going would be such a big boon for that team. Plus, they just need it. Too often he stands around and just watches, but he makes up for it defensively, and by being a spot-up guy, now comes the time for him to take over here and there, get more on-ball situations going. And I think ultimately we're looking at a guy who is going to take a major second-year leap because he's too smart not to. Isaac Okoro in Cleveland has been much as advertised. He's a defensive-minded guy. He doesn't really put up a whole lot of points. He's at roughly 8 points per game in just over 31 minutes per game. That's not a whole lot. He isn't really someone who stuffs the stat sheet a whole lot. Not a great rebounder, not a great passer. You might be thinking, wow, Mort, this doesn't really lead a good place. Well, yes and no. Obviously, those issues that I just pointed out are concerning moving forward. But his defense is real. There is a lot of defensive potential right there. Now, I don't think, like Patrick Williams, that he's going to develop into a perennial two-way player who can come in and give you 15, 17 points per game and great defense. I don't think that's in the cards for him. I think he's going to be more of a specialty player, much like Marcus Smart, like a respectable offensive player who can put up like 12, maybe 14 points on a good year, and then elite defense. And you know what? I'll take it. That's a good start. I do think for him, the question is, can he knock down the perimeter jump shot to a high enough degree? Right now, he's only shooting 31% from deep and only 70% from the line, so there are a few struggles here. He does need to just improve his efficiency, but I do think that comes in time. Still super young, still super raw in terms of a player. I do think he's shown some pretty good on-ball abilities in terms of passing, so there is a component here that could be explored, but ultimately, I think we are seeing a very passive offensive player who defensively is very aggressive, and he needs to discover the same level of passion and energy on the offensive end and the same level of aggressiveness too. So he's a work in progress. The early returns are decent, acceptable. I would have liked to see him a little bit more aggressive on offense. I think that is a major hurdle for him. He's got a really tough and solid build, so I just don't understand why he wouldn't take it to the cup far more than he does, and more relentlessly so. So yeah, it might be a question of him just getting acclimated to the NBA. Maybe there's a second-year jump brewing in there as well. So far, solid. I'm not super overwhelmed. I do think the Cavs could have done a little bit better at that draft slot. But again, it's early. I'm not overly concerned. We'll see in a year's time. Now I'll be jumping down to number 12, where the Sacramento Kings selected Tyrese Haliburton. Haliburton, of course, also on the short list for Rookie of the Year. He has been just phenomenal. I spoke about him in the last video as well, and one of the things I really didn't see coming was the three-point shot to the extent that it has. For him, with the slow shot release, to be able to pick and choose his spots the way that he does, that has been just tremendous. I was very skeptical coming into this year whether or not his slow shot release was going to be a problem. And yes, sometimes it's gotten blocked. Sometimes his slow release has been a problem. But for the most part, he's just kind of accepted, okay, I know what I have to deal with here. I know that I don't have the quickest of jumpers, so I have to position myself accurately. So I have to make sure that I pump fake. I have to make sure that I gauge the distance from the defender before I launch. He's just smart. That's really how you boil it down. Tyrese Haliburton right now is the smartest player in this draft class so far. He makes great decisions. This was an absolute steal by Sacramento. How often can you say that? He is going to be, I think, down the line, the primary play initiator for the Sacramento Kings. I wouldn't be shocked if De'Aaron Fox moves to more of an off-guard role. Whatever, those two are interchangeable. I kind of like that backcourt. I think it's steady. I think there's a lot of potential for collective growth there. I mean, Haliburton has been really, really surprising. I know a lot of guys loved him coming in. I was a little bit more skeptical. The intel that I got from NBA teams were not super enthusiastic about him. So to see him proving everyone wrong, that's always super cool. And I think for him to be able to do that on a team that's really lacking a lot of talent, that is just adding a lot of fuel to his fire as well. What's interesting to me is where his trajectory is going. Now, I don't think he's going to be a superstar by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think he's going to be necessarily a perennial all-star. I think he's going to be one of those guys who makes a couple all-star teams and is just a rock-solid starter for like 12 to 15 years in the NBA. That wouldn't shock me whatsoever. And that at 12 is excellent, excellent draft value. So for the Sacramento Kings, here's a message from me to you. Please don't panic and trade him. Seriously, please don't panic and trade him. Let me reiterate, don't trade him. Don't. No, just no, don't. Keep him. He's a good player. You don't have to trade away guys who are good, and you don't have to not draft guys who are good. Stick with them. You become a better team. That's how it works, Kings fans. Okay? All right, moving on. Next up is Cole Anthony from the Orlando Magic. Anthony, of course, had a rough year at college at UNC. He was flanked by virtually no shooting, and that made him look terribly inefficient. So the idea was when he made it to the NBA, he would be far more efficient. No, that has not happened. I will give him this. He is fearless. I think there's a lot of growth opportunities here. I think he will get more refined as he ages, but right now it does look a little bit rough here and there. He does take shots that are completely out of the flow of the offense, and I think he's still trying to learn his way. There is a guy in there who could become not necessarily a table setter, but a play initiator, mostly for himself. I think the best role for him is sort of being a combo guard who's very, very offensively inclined, but he will be better if he's flanked with a proper pass-first point guard or playmaker, whatever. That could be, like, that doesn't need to be a point guard nowadays. If the Magic end up getting Cade Cunningham, that would be problem solved. But yes, Cole Anthony, I think, is a scorer more so than a playmaker or a play initiator. I think he's just one of those guys who comes in and gets you buckets. So the more that his role is going to be defined and optimized, and the more practice time he's going to get, I'm fairly encouraged by his future. But right now, it does look like his decision making is rough. It's going to take some time there, but his athleticism is something you can't deny. He's really got a knack for getting into the teeth of the defense. That's very optimistic. But yes, overall, I would like to see him play a little bit more disciplined brand of basketball. Maybe that comes, I guess we'll see. So I'm not going to go too deep on Aleksej Pokusevski. Obviously, I covered him in the OKC video. Youngest player in the entire NBA. What he's doing is indescribable. What he's going to turn into, I have no idea. I don't think anyone knows. He is just raw creativity at this point, which, you know what? That's exciting. So just to reiterate myself from that video, I'm just going to be in for the ride, man. It's going to be fun. He's a super weird, lanky, long forward who can dribble, shoot, defend. Weird player. I very much look forward to seeing what he's going to be, and that's not an answer we're going to be getting by the end of this year or by the end of next year. That's going to be like year 4, year 5, maybe even year 6. We're finally going to be realizing, oh, that's what he is, because right now, coin toss. So we may not know what Poku is going to be, but we do know what Saddiq Bey is going to be, because he's already it. Saddiq Bey is going to be a 3-point gunner, and he's going to be high volume at that. Defensively, he's still got some progress to work out there, but it's coming along. And defensively, you could argue that right now, when you're a rookie, you don't really need to carry that much of a burden. Most rookies suck on defense, to be quite honest with you. So it's the offensive growth as of right now, and then in the coming years, then you can kind of attach the defensive role onto him. But as of right now, his confidence level shooting the 3-point shot is really unmatched for most rookies. He's coming in, he's having huge games. He's not afraid to space the floor. He's not afraid to shoot. He is a guy who will eventually, in my opinion, become one of those guys who knocks down with regularity 200 to 250 threes a year. And I know some of you are like, that's super high, but yes, have you seen where the league is trending? Like, that number is not going to be significantly high, especially for the highest volume guys out there. 200 to 250, that's very decent. Most guys, I think, in a couple of years are going to be averaging about 150. That's going to be the situation and the reality of the thing. So Saddiq Bey going about 50 to 100 more. Yeah, I could see it. I could see him becoming one of those guys. Maybe even more than that, because he loves to pull that trigger. And if you get a playmaker next to him, again, I'm going to bring up Cade Cunningham because the Pistons could be in play for him. That's only going to open that door even more. I think Bey is one of those sneaky guys who could have a couple seasons where he averages around 20, 22 points per game, maybe in a couple years down the line, where everyone afterwards is like, wow, we didn't see that coming. But he's got that knack for scoring. And when you are such a gifted shooter, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if the defenses started overplaying him, at which case he can start putting the ball on the floor. He's still got a lot of work to do in that department, but I'm not ruling it out. Finally, on my list today from the New York Knicks, Immanuel Quickley. I've already praised this guy on this channel for at least a couple episodes. Look, this is just a guy who's a straight up bucket, a shooter, someone who can come in and give you instant offense. I think Quickley is everything that Kobe White should have been, but isn't. He's a guy who knows his role. He's a guy who comes in, plays pick and roll basketball, shoots both off the bounce, but also a spot up. Like, he's just such a versatile shooter and scorer. I think he is going to be one of the primary drivers for New York in the coming years. And as a side note to that, Obi Toppin has not really looked all that good this year. It's more so been Quickley than Toppin, and that's probably unfortunate when you spend such a high draft pick on Toppin. Quickley was drafted at 25, so yeah, it's unfortunate that you get the quality so late in the draft and not get it high up, but it is what it is. At the very least, you didn't get two guys who struggle getting on the floor. Quickley is a long-term NBA player. As far as my outlook on him, I cannot imagine him losing his place in the league for the next 12 years at the very least, because his shooting and his playmaking and understanding of time and score is just too valuable. Now, is he going to be a full-time point guard, or is he going to be more of a combo? I think more so the latter, but it wouldn't shock me as he ages if he grows into that decision-maker role a little bit more and becomes a guy who can handle the offense from time to time. Now, is he a full-time starting point guard? You know, a guy like Chris Paul who runs the offense 85% of the time? No, I don't think that's in the cards for him. I think he has to be a guy who shares that responsibility with someone else, but that's really not much of a problem. The NBA in this day and age also prefers having multiple ball handlers, so I don't foresee this becoming an issue for Quickley whatsoever. I think for him, it's about defense. I think it's about him matching up against bigger players, whether he can hold his own. He's super young, he's a rookie, so we'll need to see that in a couple years, but offensively, he is certainly on the right track. And a reminder, next week I'm doing a major Q&A on this channel, so ask your questions in the comments below and I'll catch them then.